When I listened to this album the first time, I'm like, this shit slaps.
Mm-hmm.
But then I dug in, especially on this song, and I'm like, it actually doesn't slap as much if you're really paying attention to it. But
Passively, it slaps more.
Passively is going way better, right?
Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. We review a new album every single week. We look at the lyrics, the production, the overall aesthetic of the album, and how that album fits into the context of that artist's career. For everyone watching on YouTube, hit that like button, share this video, and of course, leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we always are. My name is Adriel Smiley, aka Adriel Smiley Official, aka AdrielSmiley.com, aka The Godfather. We're here with His Royal Highness, aka The Bunny, aka The Munch, King Grant.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are here about to talk about Tommy Richman and his latest album, Coyote. Tommy Richman, an artist that you and I have been aware of, you more than me, since years ago, like 5 years ago, you said?
A couple years ago, 2022, around there.
Okay, so 2 years ago. 2 years ago, been aware of Tommy Richman, somebody that's exploded on the scene this year with $1 Million Baby. The devil is a lie. He's been out here. He has finally dropped Coyote, something that I've been excited to listen because I was like, okay, he has two singles, one Omega Hot single, and one that was pretty good. What does the album sound like? So we're here.
Yeah, I also been very intrigued. I think like the Tommy Richman songs I'd heard before, I thought were cool, but I was not thinking he was gonna have, a number one song in the country, number two song in the country.
In the middle of the Drake and Kendrick beef.
Never crossed my mind before. And $1 Million Baby, which was in the spring of 2024, it debuted at number 2. And that's the part that I want to start with to talk about how big this song was that it kind of was blowing up before it actually dropped.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, what every artist tries to do on TikTok. You try the snippet, you hope it gains traction. He actually did it. And everyone was anticipating the song before it even came out. So for a new artist to have their song debut at number 2, I think is huge. Getting your song that high is a separate thing. And we saw someone like Shabuzi with Tipsy had the song rise and rise and rise and eventually get to number 1. But debuting at number 2 is a whole different ballgame. So when, we are 5 years from now, we're thinking about how big this song was, it was the hottest thing. Like there was nothing bigger than it. And then the follow-up to that with The Devil Is a Lie. Now, people were considering $1 Million Baby the song of the summer. That was the early leader. I was like, now that summer's basically over, I would say it probably was song of summer. That and Not Like Us.
Yeah.
And Tipsy can be a third. That's the holy trinity of song of the summer right there. But it was streaming well on top of that. And I think the trifecta of doing well on Billboard, doing well on TikTok, and streaming is something we haven't seen from kind of a viral hit in a long time. To me personally, Devil Is a Lie is the actual better song.
Okay.
Which I think made me more intrigued because when I heard $1 Million Baby, I was really rocking with it. I said, okay, I like this sound. I like this vibe. It kind of reminded me of Brent Faiyaz's last album. Some of the more upbeat songs. I said, okay, this feels like it's an outtake of Larger Than Life. No, for anyone who doesn't know, he signed to Brent Faiyaz in 2023. But I was very impressed that the second song, the follow-up, was even better to me. And usually in this case, that's not what happens. It's like you got this viral song, this hit. We reviewed Tinashe a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That was not what happened in that case. So for me to hear a second song that's better than the first, I was very, very excited. How were you feeling about him at the time when everything was blowing up? We found that an album was coming. Like, what were kind of your expectations of what he had, in the tuck?
I was really thinking this shit is about to be good because $1 Million Baby doesn't really sound like anything right now. I think maybe if you're from, Virginia? I think
He's from DC, yeah.
DC. That this is kind of like a regional sound, but nationally, internationally, people's music doesn't really sound like this. Like,
oh, sorry. He's born in Virginia. Yeah. I guess he grew up in DC.
Okay, right? But this music, I think Pharrell also even commented on this on this track going big. So I think that this is like a sound that is really unique nationally and internationally, right?
Mhm.
To the point where I can't really fully put a finger on the genre because it's kind of like electro funk, but it's also like hip hop, but it's kind of like a little bit of R&B. Like it's a weird combo. So I'm like, if he's doing a one song like this where the snippet was omega hot, when I was
Yeah.
the snippet,
Yeah.
it was a snippet on TikTok where the audio was distorted. And everybody's like, this is the hottest shit right now.
Because I remember they had the two versions. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. The VHS version as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the distorted version was the version that was going crazy. And then he did an official version and cleaned it. And then that exploded too, right? Leaving the distorted version in the dust, even though I like the distorted version better.
Same.
And then I was like, okay, so we're going huge, new sound, relatively new artist, right? I'm like, this is going to be big, right? So when Coyote was announced, I'm like, this shit's about to be huge. But then he also said, $1 Million Baby and Devil is a Lie is not on the album.
Yep.
And I said to myself, this guy's making one of the biggest mistakes of his career, genuinely.
Do you still feel that way? I think we're also going to get into the project more, but quickly, yes or no, do you still feel like that was a huge mistake for him?
Yeah, because those, like, how can you leave one of the songs of the summer off your album? This is the whole reason. It is one of the largest reasons why we're listening to your music.
Yeah. I would say the biggest reason. I think if this was not the song of the summer, we'd probably be doing Leon Thomas's album right now instead of Tommy Richman's.
Right.
And I think as well, and this was kind of a test case for me of like learning how the consumer, indulges in music, is that this was one of those few like super big TikTok hit songs that sounded different and was good.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hear a clip or a snippet and you hear the whole song and you're like, not as great.
Yeah.
This full song was still really good. Devil is a Lie was still really good. And I think that being the case, what this really reminds me of in terms of a moment in music was when Crew came out by Shy Glizzy, Brent Fayez, and Gold Link, because there was no song like Crew out before that song came out.
Yeah, that's so true.
And it did feel like a regional sound that just happened to reach us. And even years later, when that song comes on, totally turns the party up, different vibe than what else is going on. And this felt kind of like that of like, wow, feels refreshing, a different sound. But I think where the pushback came is that he came out of nowhere. Okay. I think a lot of people never heard of Tommy Richman before $1 Million Baby. And I think for people to hear of you at once and it be such a huge song is kind of unnatural in a sense.
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot and with other artists and other genres, but he was really kind of tapping into that hip hop fan base, and a lot of hip hop fans are becoming aware of this song. And he said it before, I am not a hip hop artist, but I think especially in hip hop, they have a problem with plants. I think in pop music, it is just more expected. Their plants are going to exist. Sabrina Carpenter has been getting those accusations recently of like, I never heard of you 2 years ago. Now you're doing Madison Square Garden.
Even though she's been here forever.
And she's been around, but I think that's just what you expect. I think, to me, the plant allegations, he dealt with those probably as well as I've seen anyone deal with them. Because I feel like he's not what you would think of a traditional plant. He's a little more edgy, not as media friendly as you'd want a plant to be. And I think as well, he's talented. And that's where it's like, plant for me has a connotation of like, they don't have talent. They just got put on. I don't think that about him. So for me, I knew about him before, so I know he's not a plant.
Yeah.
But I think those plant allegations probably hurt him a little bit, but I think he dealt with them well.
Yeah, I think the plant things never even stuck for me because I know you. I know you in particular, and you've been tapped in. Your Brent Fayez's Canadian manager, right?
Unofficially.
Unofficial. Let me let's make that clear. Unofficial. But we're just joking, guys. But yeah, since you were so heavy on Brent Fayez, you're already aware of Tommy Richman, and I was already slightly tapped in. So when people are like, "Oh, it's a plant," or "How did he come out of nowhere?" Blah blah blah. I'm like, I think this guy just kind of existed, but on a smaller scale, right? And I think, it's just the power of the internet, power of TikTok.
Yeah.
Where you get that one snippet, man.
You're gone.
you're out of here, You could just have that one moment and put you on the map for real. And I think that's just what happened to him. I think that we talk about this. I feel like we talk about this so frequently, but just like, just because you have not heard of an artist does not mean that they did not exist.
Preach.
Right? People make art all the time, right? The person that's going to blow up next year, you haven't heard of them. You haven't heard of them.
Facts.
Right? So you just got to accept the fact that you don't know everything.
Accept it.
You have to accept the fact you don't know everything. You don't know every artist. You don't know every region's sound. Right? And you're not going to know who's going to mash together weird influences and create a new soundscape. Right? And I think that's kind of what happened with Tommy Richman, is where, for me, when it talks about like the production, he has mashed together these two or three artists when it comes to like their production or even just like style of making music. And it seemed really weird to a lot of people. To me, the Coyote is like, if you mash together three things.
Let's hear it.
If you took Michael Jackson, mashed him with Tyler, the Creator, doing the voice effect.
Yeah.
But then like Justin Timberlake wanted to make the album.
I don't hate that.
Right?
I don't hate that.
I think that when it comes to Coyote, there are so many times where those three influences, you can kind of like pull. It's like you kind of like pull the strands and see them. I don't think he's like ripping them. I just think like you can see like it's one thing like for a song like Temptations or Whitney, where it's like those are Michael Jackson style produced songs, especially Temptations, where it's got like the shimmering effects and the sparkles and the disco drums, right? But then the vocal, this constant need to use a vocal effect reminds me of Tyler, the Creator on Igor.
Yes.
Right? Where he had that vocal pitch change, right? So that's what I'm talking about when he mashes those two artists together. People are really, they're going to hear me when I say that at the beginning and be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Trust me, doing the research. I'm doing the research, people. So yeah, that's what I feel like when it's those two influences mashed together. It doesn't sound like Tyler Creator's music at all. Kind of sounds like MJ's production. But that's where I also get like the Justin Timberlake-ness, where I'm like, this is the album Justin Timberlake thought he was making earlier this year.
That part I can't agree with, but I like that you're basically naming pop stars. Like Tyler Creator is probably more of the underground of those three guys.
Yeah.
But at this point in his career, like he's a superstar.
Absolutely.
And I think the pop sensibilities of Tommy Richman is clear all over this project. And if what I've been describing it is like, think about if someone was a pop star, but they weren't like a corny theater kid. You know, like they were like the edgy, smoker guy, but just loves to make pop music.
Right.
That's what this feels like to me. And one thing I thought about in terms of the sound of this project is what would have been the single if he didn't have $1 Million Baby and Devil's a Lie. Now, obviously, he put out Whitney ahead of time. Thought You Were the One was the other single.
Yeah. And
those two have been kind of in my head in terms of sound, because I was like, those are such interesting choices once I heard the rest of this project. Okay. There's probably 2 or 3 songs on here that I'm like, these would have been better singles personally than those two.
Yeah. I think he should have played Temptations. I think Temptations would have been a better single than those two.
That's literally the first song I have notes on, because that gnarly bass guitar intro is like so juicy, so sticky. It's like, oh, what are we about to get into here? And I wrote in my notes here, would Temptations have went viral? Like, is there any way you see Temptations going viral the way the other two did? Because to me, there's a few songs on here that is quality of music are just as good as $1 Million Baby and Devil Is a Lie. Like, Temptations to me is one of those where the music is actually just as good as those other two songs. So why was that not one of the singles? Not the one that was chose to go viral in a sense. Right. But I think that this sound from him, if this was what we thought he was, would we be as excited for the project?
Yes.
And that's where I'm like, he's done a great job here, production-wise, of showing us a certain side of him. Because if we had thought 2 months ago, 4 months ago, Temptations was what we were getting on this project, would we be as excited? I think we're happy to hear it when it's here, but I don't know if we'd be as excited beforehand.
Yeah, I think the singles are kind of like a framing instrument for him. I mean, for every artist, the singles are supposed to do that. But I think for him in particular, even though $1 Million Baby and Devil Is a Lie are like his singles and probably going to be the song that he performs to the end of his life.
Yeah, for sure.
The other songs are like, okay, what does his real music sound like? Right? That's what his, I'm trying to get in the artist mindset. Like, you have those two singles, but like, this is my real music. Like, this is what I'm making. These are my deep cuts. But since we already had the smashes, I can give you a deep cut.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, this is the single, like you can garner enough attention on a deep cut to make it a single.
Yeah, it's very traditional in the sense of the old way of putting out music because those two songs sound so singly. Yeah. Even though I love Temptation, like that's not as singly as $1 Million Baby is. And I think that having the juxtaposition of even the opportunity to say, listen, y'all heard the singles to get me popping, not even on the project. And I think the one other song on here that I feel like maybe my favorite song on here, because I like this album a lot, is Give It All. That to me reminds me of this band called Joan. All my Joan fans, you guys know about Joan? Wow,
you listen to Joan.
Oh, love Joan. Love Joan.
Shout out to Joan.
Yeah, big shout out to Joan. But it's very 80s synth pop vibes. And I think that his voice with that style of production is such a good blend. Like, I think vocally, he has this kind of like pseudo falsetto he does.
Yeah.
That's like, it sounds a little bit strained, but also it's like his go-to move in a sense. I think those two match well on that sound. Like, Give It All is the best mix of me to his voice and the production coming together. It's a slight modulation, not as crazy as other songs, but I think that to me is where he shines the most.
Yeah, I think that the voice, I've been thinking about this album and Tommy Richman's, the voice that he uses really, really deeply, because obviously it's a signature because he pretty much uses it on every song in the past 12 months. But this is where I was talking about like the Igor element of Tyler the Creator. Even when the pitch shifting of it was happening for Tyler the Creator on Igor, there was times where you heard his actual real voice.
Yes.
Right? And I feel as though Tommy Richman never gives me that extra element. I don't know what his real voice sounds like. Like a real singing voice, I don't know what that really sounds like. And I think that one thing that can happen on this album is like, I feel like it gets too samey. Like he's singing the same way every time, and there isn't like, he's not trying to, like, I don't think he's trying to like hit any sort of note, trying to go for any vocal trick, any vocal tool. He's not really doing that. And it kind of reminded me of Yellow Days, where Yellow Days just has the voice.
I like that. Okay.
Right? But Yellow Days never tries to do anything outside of...
The voice itself is enough.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And I think Tommy Richman does the same thing. So to me, I'm like, it's cool. But it's going on for like 40 minutes now of just like the one tone, one sound, one, like everything. Like he doesn't try to, you have Post Malone, he tries to do a vibrato. You have Playboi Carti's doing different pitches, different sounds. Future, different shit all the time. Yeet doing different, but he never deviates in any way, right? And I think that's my biggest, one of my bigger gripes is like, it's the same voice all the time.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a difference. Like I think, and on a song like "Thought You Were the One," that's his version of like a ballad and him like belting. You know what I mean? Like that's his version of it. So he has that a little bit of a change. But what this really reminded me of is Don Toliver, and I think Don Toliver, obviously one of the kings of auto-tune already at his kind of young age in the game. But I see videos of Tommy Richman performing live. And it kind of sounds like the record in the way of like he can actually hit those notes. Okay. And this like pseudo falsetto he does is not just like a, voice modulation thing in the studio. He can actually sing live. Right. And I think they're probably some better than Don Toliver live, but I think Don Toliver is kind of that same way where it's so heavy auto-tuned on the record. Then you see him live, you're kind of like, is he going to be able to sing this? Like, and I think Tommy Richman definitely gives that energy with how much voice modulation is on the whole project.
Yeah.
And seeing him live, I thought to myself, that's going to be a cool thing when he tours more, of hearing it live is almost a whole different record. Because the performances I've seen of him live, he has no effects on the mic. And so to have that kind of effect where seeing it live is almost a whole different record in a cool way, I think that's going to really, help him going forward. Because you're right, on the project, it's like vocally, there's some different things, but I kind of feel like I get the point. Like if it's your first listen to Tommy Richman, your first project hearing him, you're like, okay, I get him now. Like I don't need to hear another project. I know where he's at vocally. The one song that really stood out to me from a production standpoint is Vanity.
Okay. I like that one.
Yeah, it is like kind of
New Jack Swing, baby. Come on now.
Yeah, like this is where you brought up his influences, and you brought up JT and Mike Jack.
Yeah,
like most of this project to me is a much older sound. Like this is sounds like coming from an old soul. He's only 24 years old. But Vanity was the song production wise where I was like, well, the 24-year-old wants this kind of production. you get what I mean? This sounds like the end of a scene in a 90s black romance movie.
Yeah.
So that was one, like the cowbell is the star of that record. But that record, I was like, okay, like, of course you see the 80s influence in some of the other tracks, but that was the one where I was like, that's kind of even how we got $1 Million Baby. Like there's a certain tempo and just mood to the songs that is not of the present. And that's most of this record, which is probably why I like it as much as I do. But it's kind of like a modern twist on an older tempo.
True. I think that it's, I like New Jack Swing right now. Like he was doing it. There was that song by Micah. Remember Micah where he had that New Jack one-on-one?
Yes.
And even New Jeans when they did Supernatural. Yep. So like there is a slight strain of New Jack that is coming through in the 2020s. And I like it. I think that because of how production and vocal modulation and stuff like that has advanced in the 2020s versus when New Jack Swing was hot, which was like 90s?
Yeah,
early
80s, 90s, yeah.
There's a lot of new elements that you just would not hear from the past that are happening now. So I think that with Tommy Richman, like that voice for New Jack Swing didn't exist, right? Like
no one, no.
Yeah, nobody was doing something like that. So you get to hear those new elements, and again with like somebody like New Jeans, it's like a whole girl group doing New Jack Swing, right? So and it's also Korean music. So
yeah,
I like that is happening. I like that element, and I would be intrigued by more of it by him. Because there's something nobody's really nobody's
doing. Yeah. And I think his biggest misstep, if any, in this whole rollout is the juxtaposition of the quicker songs with the slower songs.
Right.
I think the quicker songs is what you think when you think of Tommy Richman. Even though he doesn't give me the vibe he's going to dance on stage, he doesn't give me the energy he's going to be getting busy on stage. But the quicker songs is kind of where his bread is buttered as of now.
Yeah.
This project makes it feel to me like he likes the more slower sound, like personally, but I think that's what he's known for before. That's my last bit of production before we get into lyrics. Seems Like Time, Moves Forever, feels like an outro, if an outro is ever an outro. Like, this feels like the most outro song we've gotten in several albums. And you know who this reminded me of? As someone who I'm actually waiting on music for, Joji.
Oh, yeah.
That's what this record reminded me of.
Yeah.
And I think that the fullness of his production is the big kind of plus of this project, and to me, the star of this project. I like what he's doing kind of vocally. I like what he's doing in terms of flows and cadences, but production-wise, that's the star here. And, Seems Like Time Moves Forever as an outro. That was when I was like, yeah, he definitely has some kind of finger on the pulse of like what he wants, what kind of mood he's going for.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, this one, again, reminded me of some of my favorite Joji tracks, but I like the outro a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned Joji, because when I was listening to this album, Coyote, I think that one thing that was really missing for me was like features. Where are the people at, bro? I mean, like he's got 3 people featured on it. He has My Name Isn't J-Mac.
Shout out Trevor Spitta. I've been following Trevor Spitta for a long time. Shout out
Trevor Spitta, Zachary Moon, and Paco. Respectfully, I'm saying this with all due respect. Get some real people on here, bro.
No, I just
Get some real people on here.
I super disagree with you.
You need to get some, even the Kevin Abstract, I think actually would have worked really well.
I disagree. Like, I get what you're saying because there's so much eyes on him.
Yeah.
Like, now's the time to do something like that. But if you think of the trees coming from the Brent Faiyaz tree, that was Brent Faiyaz' move coming in. Most of his projects weren't big features or no features.
Yeah.
It was just him. And I think there's a formula to that where it's like you can stand on your own. To think that he has 2 big songs with no features, solo, like there are way big artists than him who don't have that at this point in their careers.
Yeah.
So I think the idea of like, this is him solo, this is my world, you can join me over here. I like him doing that with his first project because I think like this obviously is a big moment. So many big artists have told us you don't want your first songs to be your biggest hits. And that wasn't the case for him. He's put out music for a while. But for a lot of people,
that was his first song.
That was basically his first song. And I think handling it from that perspective, to me, this is the way to go in terms of let people know you for you, listen to the music for you, like the songs with just you on them. And then you can take that next step. Because I think if you look at Brent Faiyaz, what he did, you know, he was 2 or 3 projects deep before we got the Drake feature, the Tyler Creator feature, Alicia Keys feature.
Yeah. So
I think going down that road, it works. It works for Brent. I think it can work here too.
Yeah, I think it's workable. I just think that it's well, the thing with Brent Faiyaz is that it's been like a boulder rolling down the hill collecting moss, right? Tommy Richman is more of like a firework that just happened.
Yeah.
And when you have one firework, you're like, cool. But if you get to see a series of fireworks in a row, you're like, sick, right? So that's why I'm like, you're talking about Joji. I'm like, oh, Joji. I'm not even asking for the big names, you know what I mean? Talk about Joji and Kevin Abstract.
I think he still can because I think that what he's created in terms of the difference of singles and album, of the singles over here, $1 Million Baby, Devil's a Lie, those can do well on their own, and the album is its own thing. He can drop a Lucy, kind of like Brent did with Tyler, where it's like, it's just a Lucy.
Yeah.
It may have an album, may not. And I also think that we're kind of in this unique space, and we'll talk about it a lot later, where how big he got right away, like he may never have another song in his entire life as big as $1 Million Baby. Like that is the part that it's like, Brent doesn't have a song that big. You know what I mean? So having a song that big is kind of like, where do we place you? This song is like all the way up here, but you know, you as an artist is probably a little lower.
Yeah.
So I think that's where he is, where it's like, you have all these eyes because it's a big record, but you as an artist are clearly not there yet.
Yeah. I would say, so aside from that, because I do think that he's missing out on the features. I feel like there was a little bit of moment there.
The Ice Spice route.
No, he doesn't have to. Guys, listen to me, guys.
Ice Spice went the future route. That's what she did.
No, but you're going over the top with it. Like
you say he had a big record.
Yep.
You say he wants features. Yeah. Ice Spice had a big record, and she got some features.
Yeah, but you're talking Ice Spice collabing with Taylor Swift. She has a feature on Taylor Swift's music, right? She has like Pink Panther's a little bit more low key.
Nicki Minaj.
So that's what I'm saying.
She went big features.
She went big. So I'm saying he doesn't even need to do that. Give me a little bit more low key but known.
No,
give me some low key but known. Yeah, Kevin Abstract is low key but known.
Fair.
Joji low key but known.
No, you're right. You're right.
Give me some low key but known people, because it's still his space.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And those 2 guys I mentioned, they exist in their own space, but they have like a weirdness to them that they could appear on something like this, and it wouldn't even be that out of whack. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's my thing. I think with the features, overall, I think when it comes to like his singing and just like vocals, and this can go into like the lyrics, is that I feel like anytime he sings in the songs, he is like, yeah, you know, in like the mix, just put me on the bottom. Like, just put me all the way.
Literally.
Put everything over top of me. Even put the secondary vocals, like put that above me. I want everything above me. Put me on the bottom. I don't want anybody to hear a single word that I say. Right? So that was an interesting choice for me. And like lyrically, like it makes it more obscure what is actually being said. But that was just something that I wanted to point out, because I was like, when I'm here trying to look at the lyric shit, I'm like, How? He said that?
No, that
You know what I mean?
that was me. I needed to look up the lyrics. I was like, I'm catching some of the choruses and the hooks.
Yeah.
But lyrically, I'm not really with you. And that's why I brought the Kid Cudi record, because there's a moodiness to this project that I think the lyrics fit as well. And I think that this is, again, such a unique case because this is a hit song that everyone has heard.
Yeah.
And usually we don't come into an album, it's someone's first big album, and have this other brand and other idea of them. Where like the mood of this project ain't no $1 Million Baby.
Right.
Like that's two different worlds.
Yeah, this is closer to the Igor space that I was talking about.
Yeah, and I think there's a moodiness to his music that I kind of applaud him now more for making those two records that went big, because like the lyrics and the tone on here is definitely giving, again, like early Kid Cudi more than it's giving like Justin Timberlake, you know, in terms of just energy and vibes. On Seems Like Time Moves Forever, in the pre-chorus he says, I don't hear a word from you because the silence is loud. It's so damn loud, so damn loud. Can you figure me out? It's so damn loud, so damn loud. Can you figure me out? His lyrics on here are pretty basic.
Yeah.
Nothing that's going too deep, not multiple meanings, not as much storytelling in the traditional sense. There's some parts in here that are clearly autobiographical, and I like that from him. But in this part where he goes, I don't hear a word from you because the silence is loud, like that is what made me think of Kid Cudi a bit, because he's really trying to give you the vision of what he's feeling. Like this is more a feeling album than an understanding what he's going through album.
Yeah.
And so I think lyrically he has some ways to go, but I think that from what I gathered, like the vibe of his music, the lyrics is not that important.
Yeah, I think that it's not super important. He's definitely trying to say stuff though. I think that he is like singing about certain scenarios. Like I Thought You Were the One is probably one of the
I like that song a lot.
Yeah. I liked it until I was really listening to it, because it's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
It's a vibe.
Yeah, but what he's saying is
yeah, it's a little bit crazy. But this is, I would say this, I'll put the chorus here and we'll talk about the other parts, but it's like, you know, I thought you were the one, and then thought you were the one. Right. But he's doing that vocal of like that lower, like again, it's below everything. His actual voice, like where he is in the mix, put below everything. The drums, the ad-libs and stuff like that. And it gets to this point where it kind of like, it hurts the emotionality of the song for me. Because like now I'm like, now for a song as like thinking somebody is the one, right? Somebody that you loved, past tense or current tense, you know, depending on how you want to feel about his lyrics. He kind of neuters his own emotional like ability in the song, because it's below everything, and it's also in that voice that he doesn't modulate in, right? So he gets to this. So when I listened to it the first time, when I listened to this album the first time, I'm like, this shit slaps. But then I dug in, especially on this song, and I'm like, it actually doesn't slap as much if you're really paying attention to it. But
passively, it slaps more.
Passively is going way better, right? Because then things like where he's like, maybe there's a chance if I pray every day, I'm gonna get what I want. I dreamed last night, you're in my head. You're always sticking with me even when I don't want you. I'm treating you right, not doing you wrong. I know you won't forget that night. It's been so long. Looking at my face, my eyes are amazed. That last part, my eyes are amazed, is pretty good. But the first, you know, few bits where he's like, you're always sticking with me when I don't want you. I'm treating you right, not doing you wrong. It's a little bit rough. Right? So
I think that's who he is, man. I think the issue that he gives us in a sense is that he's definitely giving us artistes. Like that's been clear here that he's trying to be like, I'm an artiste. I know I'm only from TikTok, but I'm an artiste.
Right.
And then we talk about different from entertainer, artist, poet. He again, I'm trying to be an artiste.
Right.
And I think when you say that you're an artiste, we think lyrics. and we think, okay, you're an artiste. Let's hear the artiste. Let's hear what it is. And an album I listened to recently, one of both of our favorite albums of the past couple of years, Sampha, Lahai.
Yeah.
And I thought about Sampha's songwriting. Now, obviously, two different worlds, two different levels.
Did you see the deluxe came out?
I did.
I haven't heard the deluxe yet.
Yeah, I listened to it expeditiously. And obviously, two different levels. But I think that's where our mind goes when it comes to someone who's trying to be an artiste. We're like, okay, you say you're an artist.
Yeah.
Let's hear the lyrics. And I think from this album and from the rest of his music before this, he's almost kind of Travis Scott-esque. Where Travis Scott-esque where he's not actually saying anything, but it's all fitting together.
Okay.
And I think that like that's the difference here is that like you're not gonna get some deep, story with his lyrics.
Yeah.
But it will fit together and be cohesive in terms of on theme, on brand, on topic. So to me, that's where he lives. I wonder if you have any other lyrics. I don't want to talk about his career. I think this is very, very interesting.
When it comes to other lyrics, not really. I think maybe not really. I think it's because his lyrics are more simplistic. I mean, it's okay to be simplistic. I'm not saying it's a problem, but like when it's getting to the point where it's like, I'm treating you right, not wrong. I'm like, bruh, right? So that's my problem with him. But I think that the lyrics fit. You have a song like Whitney. We know who it's about. We know what Whitney's like. We know how he's acting around Whitney. It's fine. I wish that my only thing is like bring him up in the mix, bro. I actually want to hear what he said. Like maybe he's hiding maybe he's trying to hide it. That the lyrics aren't that deep. Maybe.
I think that's his vibe. Like to me, it does kind of feel like it's the pop adjacent version of the opioid gang. Like he feels like he's like a version of that. Like it's more for the production, more for the vibes, but it's pop.
Right.
And it's darker,
Slightly.
like kind of like how The Weeknd was at first, where it's like he is saying some shit, but it's more the vibe, it's the darkness, it's how the song makes you feel. I think for his career, this is definitely a big plus for me. I think that the skepticism just raised higher and higher the better that song did. Like
right.
$1 Million Baby, as it grew and moved, skepticism just grew and grew and grew. So I think that a lot of people were listening to this, but this is probably the most universally like skeptical album we've had.
True.
In like years. Where everyone's gonna listen, but they're kind of like, And I think why it helps is, to me, he kind of did a good job of two different things, which for an artist, we're usually asking them to do better at one or the other.
Right.
And I think if we had an album full of $1 Million Babies, personally, I wouldn't like that album as much. And I think an album like this, if you had an album full of $1 Million Babies, you'd be asking, what else can they do?
Yeah.
You'd want a Temptations, you'd want a Give It All, you'd want a Vanity in there. So for me, this is a plus just in terms of he's shown his range musically and shown that he's not a one-trick pony.
Yeah, I think it's a plus too, because even though he went outside of $1 Million Baby, and I don't agree with making that decision, I think that it did show breadth of his music ability. It did show that $1 Million Baby also not a fluke.
Yeah,
can make other good songs. And he can also make good songs that don't sound like $1 Million Baby. Like we're talking about, he's making new Jack Swing songs, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that it's good for his career overall. I think it would have been better if $1 Million Baby and Devil Is a Lie is on it, just because in that extra push.
Yeah.
And also makes the album more memorable that those songs are on it. Without it, he's kind of banking on this being good.
Yeah, and I think he made the right choice from that perspective. I think if I was managing an artist like him in this position, this is what I would have done.
Wow.
Because I realized two things. Listening to this album over and over again, I was like, people I've compared him to, you compared him to, all those artists are, first of all, either well over 30 or legacy acts, or dead, or dead. So it's like, who is he competing against in the market for young artists? I think
That's
that
true.
because that hit was so big, it's giving one hit wonder, like, kind of like Ice Spice, and then they had to prove it. No, then they had to prove it to us that they're not.
Okay.
Which Ice Spice did.
Okay.
But I think he was in that prove it mode where I think if it was the other way around and this album came first and then $1 Million Baby came out a year later,
yeah,
it would be a different tone. But because that's the first time we're hearing him, we're kind of like, let's see what you got.
Yeah,
prove it to us. And I think that kind of threw off, who he is as an artist or the tone he usually does. Because I've been thinking about it the whole time this album's been out. I don't know who to compare him to. I don't know who he's competing with from a sonic perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know who he's competing with from like an image perspective. So to me, it's like we hear an artist who's pretty unique in kind of their sound and their image and their kind of entry into the game.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the last part, the entry into the game, everyone's eyes are on them, antennas are up, and you got to prove it to us.
Yeah, I think that he doesn't really have somebody he's competing against. I guess he's competing. Yeah, he's competing against ghosts of the people that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's competing against the ghost of Michael Jackson, his music, he's making music that sounds like Michael Jackson's music. So you kind of have to say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Timberlake, because his music sort of sounds like Justin Timberlake. I do think that where this album exists on like a continuum is like bad, Michael Jackson bad. And like Igor, like the soundscape, and he somehow put an album in the middle of it, which is kind of interesting to me because those are like literally like
two classic
albums, and he somehow put an album in between the two.
It's like a darker version of those two.
Yeah,
it's like I think you're right from those two in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Like put those two together, but the singer is emo.
Yeah.
Like,
so I think it's like that. And I think that I just want to give props to Tyler, the creator, to the idea of like, we're like, oh yeah, there's somebody that can exist in between Tyler, the Creator and Michael Jackson. And for him to have jumped that person into making something that sounds so different than those two, but still having something that's being comparable is insane. Right. And for it to also be like a classic album, like is insane. Like actually insane.
Yeah, undeniable.
So I think that Tommy Richman is an interesting candidate for me. How do you feel about the album being a no skips?
I think it is a no skips to me.
No skips?
Yeah, like I think it is no skips to me. Like I haven't skipped a song every time I listen to the project. So if I got to be real with what I'm actually doing, I haven't skipped yet.
Right.
So to me, it is a no skips. What about you?
I think for me, it's not a no skips just because a song like Whisper in My Ear and Tennessee, I can't get down with Tennessee.
Tennessee is a very interesting record, man.
I can't really get down with Tennessee. I think that the features are kind of reminded me of Suicide Boys, but discount Suicide Boys on this track.
Okay.
And I think that it's really, I think Tennessee is really dark. It's mostly this like empty soundscape, but it's usually using like the Suicide Boys like trap drums, right? And I think that it kind of like escaped what we were just talking about, where it's not in that Tyler, Creator or Michael Jackson, Justin Timberlake lane. So I didn't really love that one. And I didn't really love Whisper in My Ear, but there's still good tracks. It's not like I'm saying that it sucks, but I think there are good tracks.
What do you think about the cover?
I think the cover is dope. I am concerned, though.
Right, you concerned.
I am concerned that there may have been some artificial intelligence being used for the cover.
You don't say.
Right? I think if there was less artificial intelligence, I mean, I don't know if it's fully confirmed that it was our AI, but when I look at the man's hand reaching into his face and then becoming two things or one thing at the same time and not being able to fully see the man's eyes, I think there's some...
It must be good Photoshop. We don't got to make it AI.
I start to think that there's some foul play.
Screaming.
So,
someone can have to be good at Photoshop.
I'm feeling a little foul play. I do like the background. I like the colors. But I need somebody to clarify for me whether or not this is artificial intelligence or not.
I'm gonna say that a human did this.
Okay.
People can do Photoshop. People are talented. We're not gonna just throw their talent out the window. I think the album actually fits the color of the music.
Me too.
Which we haven't seen in a long time. It feels like that's not really something that people do anymore. It feels like. So yeah, I like the cover a lot. I'm assuming this is a vinyl cop. For me, like I don't know if it's gonna be on vinyl, but I think just because of the sound of the project, I would get this on vinyl. What about you?
I'm gonna say no. It's not a vinyl cop for me. No, it's not. Even though I like the cover, unless it's AI, then I have
I think
tribulations.
what also hurts this as a vinyl cop is not having $1 Million Baby and
Why
Devil's a Lie on
are
this.
they not on it?
Because Devil is a Lie is still my favorite Tommy Richman song.
Yeah. And it's not like those two songs wouldn't fit. Like they would fit.
I don't know if they would fit, but I think that they could make them the deluxe, like the disc 2 type deal that some people do with their singles. So I think, he could have added those, but still a quality project here.
Okay.
Now your score. This is the moment everyone's been waiting for. They want to hear what you have to say about this.
I don't know if they want to hear what... Okay, so when it comes to me and Tommy Richman's Coyote, I think this is a 6.5 out of 10. Maybe even a 6. I think that the vibes are there. Very vibrational. High vibrations. Okay? I think that his songwriting is whatever. Just fine. It's whatever. I think his singing getting old. The voice is getting old. Just like how same with Yellow Days. Just doing the same voice. Like, cool. I get it. What else? And also, can I hear him on the song? Can I actually hear him on the song?
Engineer.
Yeah, where's the engineer? Who's doing the mixing and the mastering? That person needs to come back come back to the DAW station, bro. Like, this is crazy. So I think that, and also when it comes to the people he's drawing influences from, it's the master.
Yes, yes.
I'm not even saying the masters, the master, right? So when you're moving in his shadow, it's gonna be hard to really distinguish yourself. I think the vocal thing is how he's distinguishing himself, but then he's jumping into a Tyler the Creator's Igor space. I'm not gonna say just Tyler the Creator because it's mostly Igor.
Yeah, Igor specifically.
Yeah, he's jumping into an Igor space, but he's missing the versatility that existed with Igor that really made Igor so definitive, where like the vocal shifting plus Tyler's super gruff voice, that contrast, plus the production is what makes that melange like as crazy as it is. So I think he's got the ingredients, but the recipe is not fully there yet. Like the cake could, there's a little bit of flour. We're missing some flour, or there's not enough sugar.
Yes, yes.
So that's how I feel about it. So I'm saying it's like a 6. I'm gonna say 6.5.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 6.5. I'm gonna
Is
say
that your final answer?
I'm gonna say 6.5. But I need more, because if there's gonna be another album that is like this, then it's gonna be like, okay, so he has the ingredients, but he doesn't know how to make the cake. Like he doesn't know how to make it. Right?
Yeah.
Right now, I'd be like, okay, first try, it's pretty good. It was okay, but you should be able to learn from what happened here to make a better pastry, right?
That's fair.
And also put the singles on the album. I don't know what the fuck he's thinking. Put them on the album.
Maybe next time.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
What about you? How are you feeling about Tommy Richman's Coyote?
For Tommy Richman's Coyote, this is an 8 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
I think I don't say it out of the park with this project, but the bones are there. I think in terms of like a full body of work, this stands better as a full body of work. I think as songs individually, that's why I brought up, would any of these songs go viral before? It's like, these songs on their own, maybe not as punchy as $1 Million Baby. But as a whole project, I think it's pretty cohesive. I think the tone is straight through this whole thing, consistent. So for me, it's 8 out of 10. I was actually impressed with this project. I did not know what to expect at all. Like, I was like, I don't know. When Thought You Were the One was the next single after Devil is a Lie, I was like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what we're going in. And I think, thinking about this project over the past few days, that he's such a unique spot as an artist, because as a debut project, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, we've dealt with some rough debut projects. And I think in terms of like pushing genres forward, experimenting, doing something that's unique and different, he's doing all of those.
Yes.
So for a new artist to have this be their first project, I'm pretty impressed by this. In the comments, let us know what you think. Am I too high on this project? Is Demar too low
I
on
think
this
it's
project?
a 6. I think it's a 6.
Okay,
I think
fair.
it's a 6. Go ahead.
That's it. Maybe one of our biggest disagreements of the year.
Yeah.
I think this project's an 8, man. Like I really think as a whole, this whole project, like you can just put this on and it can be a whole vibe. Now,
I agree. It's a vibe.
yeah, and I do think that he's kind of being hurt in terms of just what he's done before, how we view this project. But I think time will tell. I do hope this is the start of a very long career for him.
Yeah.
And we can see him grow from this and do different things.
Yeah,
but
he's only 24.
I like this project a lot. Of course, find us on the interwebs at Album Mode Pod on Twitter, Album Mode Pod on Instagram, Album Mode Pod on TikTok, Album Mode on YouTube. On all your podcast platforms, leave us a rating and a review, 5 stars, not a single star less. And of course, like this video, leave us a comment, and make sure you are subscribed. And until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Later days.